Hello friends, this is your friend Bhushan here with another edition of Daily News Analysis. In this very important, very interesting Daily News Analysis discussion, we are going to discuss very important articles that were featured in the Hindu and Indian Express newspaper today. So let's dive into it. Particularly in the explain section, which is important from the perspective of prelims, we are going to discuss few very important articles, like the first one being ISRO NASA joint collaboration mission called NISAR. You must be hearing this mission's name from the last 1 or 2 years, but finally we are going to see the launch of the mission in June 2025. Very important mission from the perspective of prelims, from the perspective of mains. You must know latest technological happenings with respect to ISRO, India-US joint collaborations from the perspective of IR. That is also important fact. Okay, the second most important article that we are going to discuss is about the very important proud moment for India, that is the inclusion of Bhagavad Gita and Natya Shastra manuscripts into UNESCO Register. Very important fact, very important from the perspective of art and culture and GS1 as well. The third important article that we are going to discuss is about NGT and its some people approaching NGT for the preservation of Simlipal Tiger Reserve. So just from the perspective of prelims, you must know the background of NGT, how it came to be, the judicial member, the appointment process, important judgments, case laws, etc. Simlipal Tiger Reserve in particular has very special significance for tiger conservation. So you must know that particular fact and some other flora and fauna found in the Simlipal Tiger Reserve is also important, okay, from the perspective of prelims. Another important, the fourth important article that we are going to discuss is about Sudan Crisis and DRC Conflict. See, both these crises are ongoing for so long now. From the perspective of prelims, UPSC Prelims in particular, the mapping aspect of both these countries is very important. So we are going to focus mostly on the mapping with brief background about the conflicts themselves. Particularly in the decoded section, which is important for mains, we are going to discuss very few important, article that was featured in both the Indian Express and in the Hindu newspaper today, not as an editorial, but as an opinion by respected intergovernmental organization that is formed as for the reforms in UNSC, and he observed that the India is the sure contender for seat at UNSC. So UNSC reforms is very special, very important area for India's own representation at the global table. So we are going to discuss UNSC reforms and issues surrounding it, who is opposing India's bid and all those things overall, okay, in that particular section. So let's dive into it. The first important article that we are going to discuss today is about NISAR mission. See, this particular mission, as I earlier mentioned, is in news for so long now. So you must be wondering when it was going to be launched. So it was going to be launched next to next month in June. So let's briefly discuss what exactly is this mission in the first place. So NISAR is Earth Observation Satellite. Essentially, what is the full form of NISAR? NASA ISRO Synthetic Aperture Radar. See, this is one of the most brilliant collaborations between ISRO and NASA in the space field. Obviously, it is essentially a synthetic aperture radar. So what is the meaning of synthetic aperture? Okay, see, the aperture meaning being the collecting area that any antenna or any telescope has. The more larger the telescope or antenna, the more is collecting area there is, and more aperture it possesses. But in this particular synthetic aperture radar, obviously, see, the length of antenna per se is not possible. We cannot increase the length of antenna, but how we can go around this particular issue in synthetic aperture radar technology is through use of moving antennas. Okay, so essentially synthetic aperture radar works on the principle of echo. So essentially it emits the microwave signals, then the microwave signals again send the echo back. When it sends the echo back, the radar would have moved along the path of the satellite, obviously. So within that path we will have that that much aperture getting covered, and that particular area was again through echoes was mapped. So, synthetic aperture radar, very important technology from the perspective of science and technology part as well. Okay, so what exactly is this NISAR? Now, let's come back to the technology, the mission in news now. Okay, so as I said, it is a joint collaboration between NASA and ISRO. So, NASA has provided the L-band radar. So, what exactly is this L-band radar? Is radar in L-band. So, essentially for radio frequencies we have these bands, one of the most important band being L-band. So, the radar for that particular band is provided by NASA along with GPS support, along with high capacity solid state recorder to store data and other payload data subsystems. What has ISRO given to this mission is S-band radar, the GSLV launch system and the spacecraft itself. So, from through the GSLV we will launch this particular mission. So, what exactly is this mission about? So, what is the function of this mission? It will scan the globe every 12 days, very important fact. So, what this imaging does? The imaging of the Earth's land, ice sheets and sea ice will give unprecedented view of the planet. Essentially, it will image, that is the purpose basically for any sort of radar, okay, to image. So, it is an imaging technology. So, these are some specifics of that particular mission, not that much important. See, the objectives of the mission you must know. So, sometimes in mains particularly, if the question is asked directly, what are the objectives of the mission, you will be able to pinpointedly, write. So, what exactly is the mission is extremely granular observation of the Earth's surface at regular intervals that will capture the changes as small as 1 centimeter in size. This is huge, okay. So, capturing the change 1 centimeter at the level of at the Earth's surface is going to be a big challenge, and that challenge is essentially accomplished by the SAR, that is NISAR mission. Essentially, it will study the dynamic processes regarding glacier retreats, climate change processes and all those things. There is understandingly we can use this mission for natural disaster management as well. Very important role it can play in that regard as well. ISRO in particular will use it for mapping agricultural land, monitoring glaciers in Himalayas, landslide prone areas or changes in coastline as well, so that we observe the coastal erosion factor as well. So, very important from the perspective of climate change studies and disaster management. The mission will fulfill those missions. So, I earlier mentioned how the SAR works. This diagram perfectly captures the working here. As I earlier mentioned, this is the antenna and the SAR satellites. They emit the signal, then they echo back, then they are received. By that time, the satellite moves to the next location. In a way, it creates the synthetic aperture to map this whole region, okay. So, essentially this is called synthetic aperture. It is not particularly physical aperture that we are using, but it is a synthetic in nature, okay. That essentially that is the core physics regarding the radar technology that is being used here. So, essentially how is it different from traditional radar though? Very important from the perspective of prelims, but again you must have seen the terms in the context of science and technology a lot now, like radar, there is LIDAR as well, okay. So, just mention the difference between both these technologies in the comment section. Very important, which type of waves are used in which type of technology, okay, very important, and some basic applications of them, okay. There is sonar as well, okay. So, sonar is also important technology. See, all these are remote sensing technologies. So, the particularly this chart here addresses how SAR, that is synthetic aperture radar, is different from traditional radar. So, see, the most important fact of difference is in traditional radar, the radar is the antenna is fixed, the radar per se is fixed. But again, in synthetic aperture radar, the antenna, smaller antenna on a moving platform is used to simulate the larger aperture. So, not necessarily the antenna itself is huge to increase the aperture, but to increase the collecting area, to increase the aperture, we are using the smaller antenna, but we are moving it so that it can cover the larger aperture. Okay, this is basic as I earlier clearly mentioned. Okay, obviously both these are imaging techniques, but the synthetic aperture radar is much more high in resolution, regardless of weather and lightning. Okay, obviously you can see the applications here, not that much important. But what is the advantage of using SAR in the first place? So it is all weather radar. So it can penetrate clouds, fog, even darkness as well. So it can be used for day-night operations. Very important from the perspective of prelims. You must know this particular fact. High resolution, you know, as I earlier mentioned, very important from the prelims perspective as well. You know, this particular slide here mentions some specific regarding L-band radar and S-band radar. So L-band radar operates at wavelength of approximately 24 centimeter, and S-band on the other hand, which is given by ISRO, is operating at the wavelength of approximately 10 centimeter. Okay, obviously, you know, very important. Just remember this particular fact. Okay, from the perspective of prelims, very important. So this is about NISAR mission and what it is going to do. Particularly, other important India-US space collaborations and coordination points are also important, so that you can mention that in your GS mains answers as well. When it comes to India-US relations, there is important astronaut training collaboration as well. You know, you must have seen in the Hindu newspaper today, there is news about our own astronaut getting trained, you know, at NASA and going to the International Space Station shortly. Very important. Just by the way, mention that astronaut's name in the comment section. Very important. The Gaganyaan mission and the astronauts which were selected sometimes back for that particular mission. Okay, just mention that person's name, that astronaut's name in the comment section. Okay. Another important area of collaboration is about Artemis Accords. See, this Artemis Accord is essentially an accord led by United States of America to establish shared principles for responsible space exploration and use, building upon existing international space agreements. Obviously, the existing international space agreements are actually agreed upon way back in 1960s and 70s. See, currently we have seen so many tremendous developments in the space sector, particularly with the expansion of its economy, with, you know, space tourism coming up heavily. The, you know, many times the private players are playing huge part in the space sector, which is earlier dominated by the government sector. So considering all these changes, the reforms are needed. But, you know, there is always, in this sphere also, there is a rivalry between US and China. That's why the reforms are not coming up properly. Okay. So this Artemis Accord essentially is, you know, is the US response to the Chinese aggression in the space sector. In short, we can say this particularly. So this Artemis Accord is a non-binding guideline underpinning the program. What is this Artemis program though? It is the ambitious US-led project to return humans to the moon. See, you know, you must be knowing who is the first person to land on the moon, what is the name of that particular mission, who carried out, you know, all those facts, all those things, you know, it has been covered so many times already. Okay. So Artemis Accord, Artemis program in particular will bring humans back to the moon. Okay, this time for the permanent habitation. See, most of the times permanent habitation is something on the moon, and you know, actually establishing the base there for further space exploration is important area for scientists to study as well. So that proposal is important. See, India has joined, or rather signed, these Artemis Accords way back in 23. But the latest country to sign Artemis Accord is Bangladesh, which became 54th nation. Recently, Bangladesh signed the Artemis Accord. Very important fact from the perspective of prelims here. Okay. So this is the practice question for you. Just comment your answer in the comment section. The next important article that we are going to discuss is regarding very pleasing news about, you know, the inclusion of Bhagavad Gita and Natya Shastra manuscripts in UNESCO Register. PM calling it a proud moment. Indeed, it is a proud moment for all of us. So very important news from the perspective of prelims. See, United Nations, you know, UNESCO World Heritage sites are often in news. You know, sometimes back, you must have seen some Indian sites also getting included in the UNESCO World Heritage Site list. Okay. So currently what is the news is about the Bhagavad Gita and Natya Shastra's manuscripts inclusion in the UNESCO's World Register. Essentially memory of the World Register, that is the proper word here. Importance from the perspective of art and culture, GS1, okay, prelims important, okay. So what exactly is this program, Memory of the World program? See, this was started way back by UNESCO in 1992. What is the purpose of this particular program is to preserve valuable archive holdings, library collections all over the world. So it actually preserves the intangible cultural heritage or manuscripts associated with them. Okay. So it has the MOW register. So essentially what is this register is a central project of MOW. MOW here means Memory of the World, obviously. It is a program to create a compendium of documents such as manuscripts, oral traditions, audio-visual material, library and archive holdings which are of world significance and outstanding universal value. So they hold very immense very immense value to the whole of humanity. Okay. So MOW register will register these particular documents or manuscripts. They will include even audio-visual material as well. Very important from the perspective of preservation of the collective culture of humanity. Okay. What is in news now? Okay, so it is essentially with latest edition, the register now has 570 entries. What are some other entries, by the way, in the register is Mahavamsha. There is, there are drawings as well. There is, collection of Shaiva Siddhant manuscripts as well. There is audio recordings as well. So just go through this, very important from the perspective of, just factual information you must have. So what are some other Indian submissions? By the way, India contains 14 submissions in the register, including Rigveda, collective works of Shaivite philosopher Abhinav Gupta, archives of the first summit meeting of non-aligned movement. So, this is important. You must be thinking, this register may just have some ancient manuscripts or something like that. Not just that, from the perspective of post-independence history, it has preserved the archives related to the first summit meeting of non-aligned movement in Belgrade as well. Okay. Particularly, let's see the history of Natya Shastra and Bhagavad Gita here. Natya Shastra in particular is written or is traditionally attributed to sage Bharat. So essentially it is a Sanskrit treaty comprising 36,000 verses. The Natya Shastra essentially embodies the spirit, the comprehensive set of rules that defines Natya, Abhinay, Rasa, Bhav and Sangeet. Okay. So it is a basic of Indian, essentially classical Natya. Natya in here means drama traditions, music traditions, etc., etc. So it is a basic Sanskrit treaty written by sage Bharat. That much you have to remember. Okay. Bhagavad Gita, essentially we all revere Bhagavad Gita so much particularly. Gita is an essence of Hinduism. Essentially, it is a treatise or, it is a dialogue between Arjuna and Krishna which took place just before the beginning of Great War of Mahabharata. By the way, Great War of Mahabharata was actually part of sage Vyasa's Sanskrit scripture comprising 700 verses, which has been organized in 18 chapters, and embedded in the 6th book, that is Bhishma Parv, is epic poem called Mahabharata. Okay. So essentially that fact is important. So this is a poem written by Vyas that you have to just remember, Mahabharata. And in the Mahabharata there is a dialogue between Arjuna and Krishna, and that dialogue is essentially our own Gita. Okay. So particularly here we are going to discuss very important factual information regarding UNESCO. So it is a specialized UN body based in Paris, formed way back in 1945. What is the purpose of particularly this body, establishing this body, is achieving peace and security, promoting international collaborations, obviously to also increase universal respect for justice, rule of law, human rights, etc. So essentially all this has been proclaimed in UN Charter as well. So preservation of cultural heritage is something is intangible in the establishment of UNESCO itself. Currently it has 195 members. See, 195, 194, sometimes back when it comes to membership, we have seen the controversy, the US withdrawal, the Israel's withdrawal from UNESCO earlier. Under the Biden, US rejoining the UNESCO treaty again. Essentially, the second Trump administration hasn't decided on the withdrawal yet, okay? But the first Trump administration way back in 2017 have withdrawn from UNESCO once. Earlier, there is a history of withdrawal as well. So, way back in 1980s also there is, US withdrawal from UNESCO as well. That event is also very important. So, that controversy is just important from the perspective of prelims as well. You must know now currently the US is still a member of UNESCO. That fact is important, okay? So, let's see some UNESCO World Heritage Sites here and the history surrounding that. So, essentially it is a landmark or area with legal protection. This particular fact is important. See, by designating any one landmark or a place, what it does, it gives it the legal recognition under international conventions like UNESCO, okay? Obviously administered by UNESCO. Obviously the designation is also by UNESCO. You must be knowing the process of designation, okay, and the nomination, etc., etc. So what is latest when it comes to World Heritage Sites? That is important for us from the perspective of prelims here. So World Heritage Sites, there are total 43 UNESCO World Heritage Sites, okay? Out of 43, 35 are cultural, 7 are natural, and 1 is mixed site. This, see, from the perspective of prelims, you must be knowing that UPSC nowadays has habit of asking some factual data when it comes to these sort of factual things, okay, particularly UNESCO and cultural heritage regarding that as well. So you must know these particular facts here, okay, and some latest sites that were added from India in the UNESCO World Heritage Sites. But again, can you tell me in the comment section which is the one mixed site that is included in the United Nations UNESCO's World Heritage Site list from India? This one mixed site is very important, very interesting site, that is also Biosphere Reserve as well, okay? Just comment your answer in the comment section to this particular question, okay? So what is latest when it comes to World Heritage Sites? So Moi Dams of Assam and Shanti Niketan were added for 23 and 24 respectively, okay? So this is the PYQ that was asked by UPSC already. Just comment your answer in the comment section here. So the third most important article that we are going to discuss is about NGT and some people approaching NGT against move to allot 100 acres near Simlipal Tiger Reserve. Very interesting. See, that news itself per se doesn't hold any significance, but the words are important here, NGT and Simlipal. So we are going to discuss from the perspective of prelims both these aspects here, okay? Obviously GS3 environment ecology is important area. Again, tribunalization, GS2, the important bodies, tribunal bodies, quasi-judicial bodies, etc. is also important from GS2's perspective as well, okay? So let's see some background of NGT. So it was established way back in 2010. So it is a specialized judicial body for what? It is a specialized judicial body to dispose of cases related to environmental protection. See, India is only the third country after Australia and New Zealand to set up a specialized dedicated body, obviously NGT, to address what? To address environmental issues and disputes. Very important. See, in the era of climate change, in the age of technological disruptions and other aspects, this environmental crisis and environmental disputes are going to emerge in a huge manner. So we have to reduce the pendency of cases in our normal courts, and also to speed up the whole issue of justice, these special tribunal is very, very vital in that regard, so for judicial efficiency as well. So it is headquartered in New Delhi, but you know its establishment is through National Green Tribunal Act of 2010. So essentially it is a quasi-judicial body. From the perspective of prelims, you must know it is a non-constitutional body. Okay. So particularly, can you tell me some other quasi-judicial bodies which are there? Comment your answer in the comment section. Very important from the perspective of prelims as well. Okay. What are some other benches? So there is a Bhopal, there is a Pune, there is a Kolkata and Chennai. See, these 4 cities hold the benches of NGT. Very important, but the headquarters is in New Delhi. Okay. So let's see the qualification and the appointment process for the NGT members. So what exactly are the qualifications? See, NGT contains chairperson, judicial members and expert members as well. So chairperson particularly must be a Supreme Court judge or a Chief Justice of a High Court. Very important, he must be a Supreme Court judge or a Chief Justice of High Court. For judicial members, the qualification is he or she must be Supreme Court judge or a Chief Justice of a High Court or an existing retired High Court judge. For expert members, he must hold degrees in technology and you know essentially technical expertise in environmental areas. So this is the qualification for the members of NGT. So chairperson, what is the appointment process? Who appoints these members is chairperson is appointed by central government after consultation with CJI, Chief Justice of India, and judicial expert and other members are appointed by central government through special selection committee formed in that regard. Very important. So essentially central government plays huge role in the appointment process here. Okay. See this particular fact is important from the perspective of prelims here. So what jurisdiction and power of NGT is also important area. See, it can hear civil cases related to environmental laws. So which are the environmental laws which are the mandate of which is the mandate of NGT is the first one is the Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1974, Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981, Environmental Protection Act is also there, in Forest Conservation Act is also there of 1980, and there is a Biological Diversity Act. So these are the laws or the acts you know which gives the mandate to NGT as well. Okay, so you can see you know major omissions here, and those omissions are important, like for example WPA 1971 is not there. Okay, so Wildlife Protection Act of 1971 and subsequent amendment which was in news just few years back is not part of the mandate of NGT. That fact is important. Let me ask you just you know which are some other major environmental acts which are out of purview of NGT. Comment your answer in the comment section. Very important from the perspective of prelims. So see what are the natural guiding principles of NGT. The guiding principle essentially is the natural justice. See, many times the courts in particular in India are bound by procedure established by law and due process of law, but NGT is not bound by those restrictions. It works on the principle of natural justice. So what does that mean is it in its functioning it ensures fairness and impartiality per se. Okay, the focus again is on sustainable development. Precautionary principles also guides it. There is a polluter pays principle which was upholded by NGT as well, and it is flexible in admitting the evidences. Okay, so these are the guiding principles for NGT. See, the landmark judgments regarding NGT are also very important. So we have mentioned here some very landmark judgments of NGT. These case laws per se are not important from the perspective of prelims, but are important from the perspective of mains. So you must know some important case laws regarding NGT. Okay. So from 2012 to 2020, we have some very important judgments. Like in 2016, we have Art of Living Festival judgment of NGT, which essentially upheld the right to floodplains, right of floodplains rather, Yamuna floodplains in particular, and its conservation, okay, against obviously that particular event that was organized by Art of Living. So here we are, focusing mostly on Simlipal Tiger Reserve. See the specifically you can see here the picture of tiger. So what is the speciality of this particular tiger? You can see the hide of the tiger here is black. So essentially Simlipal Tiger Reserve is the only reserve where you can find black tigers. This fact is very, very vital from the perspective of prelims. Okay. So why this is, why the fur is black? Why the hide of this particular tiger or the tigers which are found in Simlipal Tiger Reserve is black is because of genetic mutations. And why that genetic mutations happen is because of the inbreeding and limited size of the tiger population that is there in Simlipal Tiger Reserve. So lack of diversified gene pool is also responsible for the presence of melanistic tigers. Okay, let's see some history of Simlipal Tiger Reserve. So essentially it was declared a tiger reserve under Project Tiger in 1973. Then it was declared a wildlife sanctuary in 1979. Then a national park in 1980, and finally a biosphere reserve in 1994. So essentially it possesses tremendous biodiversity when it comes to flora and fauna. That's why it has been recognized with so many titles. Ultimately, UNESCO also recognized it as a biosphere reserve way back in 2009 as well. Okay, along with Mayurbhanj Elephant Reserve. So nearby we have Mayurbhanj Elephant Reserve as well. So see, the geography of the tiger reserve is also very important. You must know some rivers which flow through this particular tiger reserve. There is a there is a Khairi, there is Salandi, Dev, etc., etc. Then there are some waterfalls as well, like Barehi Pani or Joranda waterfall. As I said, this fact is important. Presence of melanistic black tiger. It is the only place in the world where you can find black tigers, melanistic obviously. And also another interesting fact is about only tiger reserve in India where tiger, mugger crocodile and elephant habitat combo is found. Okay. See, from the perspective of prelims, you must know the IUCN status of all these animals that I just mentioned. Okay, but now you just remember this fact that this is the only place where you can find this combo of tiger, of mugger, crocodile, and at the same time elephant habitat. Okay, so the habitat for three of these important apex species is Simlipal Tiger Reserve. Okay. So essentially it falls under Eastern Highlands moist deciduous forest. So it is a moist deciduous. See, it is dominated by sal. So particularly from the perspective of prelims, you must know the sal is a deciduous tree species. Okay, essentially it is a direct corollary of this particular fact here, that it is a moist deciduous forest. Then what are some other species? There is a bamboo, there is mahua, other medicinal plant as well. Important species other than Bengal tiger is obviously there is a leopard as well, there is a gore, there is pangolin, there is mugger crocodile, etc. So just go through the IUCN status of all these species and important habitats regarding all these species. This pangolin in particular is very famous, or it is often referred to as one of the most trafficked animals in the whole world. Okay, so the from the perspective of prelims, you must know the types of pangolins that are found in India and their IUCN status as well. Very important species, very tragic story it has. So these are the tribal communities that are found in that particular reserve. There are Santhal, Mankadia, Kolha, there is Khadia, Ho tribes as well. One of the presence of PVTGs is also there, and called Lodha. So Lodha tribe, essentially it is a PVTG found in Odisha. See, from the perspective of prelims, you must know some PVTGs and their names, etc. Okay. So just this is a practice question based on this article. Just comment your answer in the comment section. So the next important article that we are going to discuss is about the Sudan Crisis and DRC conflict. See, many times you must have seen both these conflicts on African continent is ongoing for so long nowadays that per se the conflict itself does not hold that much importance from the perspective of prelims. But what is important from the perspective of prelims is the mapping aspect of both these countries. So we are going to discuss briefly the background of both these conflicts, but the major focus will remain on the geography, the bordering countries, etc. for both these countries. Okay. So just dive into it. Okay. So first about Sudan crisis. So Sudan crisis is essentially a military coup. So military coup was happened way back in 2021. Okay. We have seen the PYQ related to this in UPSC in 23 or rather 22 as well. But what happens in that military coup is essentially Sudanese armed forces and rapid support forces, these two factions of armed forces of Sudan, they actually staged a coup, military coup against the civilian president at that point of time. Essentially, they captured the power. Then, the power struggle was ensued between these two rival armed forces with their leaders obviously are power hungry. And in this whole process, in this whole conflict, it created huge humanitarian impact. So per se, it is one of the most important conflicts when it comes to humanity nowadays. There is hunger crisis, there is there is armed conflict which is ongoing, there is insurgencies as well. So lot of the times, and this conflict is actually getting penetrated to its bordering countries as well. So in a way, it is destabilizing the whole region. So see, from the perspective of prelims, you must know, as I earlier mentioned, the geography of Sudan here. So Sudan's bordering countries. So bordering countries, 7 countries are there. Egypt to the north, Libya to the northwest. So you can see there is Egypt, there is Libya. Then we have Chad to the west, CAR, Central African Republic to the southwest. There is a Chad, there is a CAR here. Then there is South Sudan to the south. Obviously, there is Ethiopia and Eritrea to the east. Ethiopia and Eritrea to the east. There is a Red Sea as well. To the northeast, we have the Red Sea. So it is a Red Sea country. Okay. But another important fact about Sudan is its capital. So the capital city, very historic, Khartoum city, where White Nile and Blue Nile meet. Okay. Nile in particular, as you may be knowing, is the most important water source for Sudan. Okay, I mean, essentially, what are some other rivers which are there in Sudan? There is Atbara River, which is major tributary of Nile. Then there is a Sahara Desert as well. There are there is desert called Nubian Desert to the northeast. What are some mountains which are found? Red Sea Hills in the east, Jebel Mara in the west, and Nuba Mountains in central southern parts. Okay. See, just remember these important mountains as well. Many times in prelims, you must be knowing places in news, conflict regions, what is the conflict about, often directly asked. So you must be knowing these particular facts in conflict region. So now we will discuss the basics of DRC conflict. See, essentially, to give you the brief background of the DRC conflict, essentially it is the armed rebellion by who? By M23 fighters. Essentially, these M23 fighters themselves have some huge history as well. So these are the Tutsi militias, which are from the neighboring Rwanda. So one of the reasons for the current conflict is also the Rwandan genocide of 1994 as well. Okay, so very important. See what these rebels have done. They have actually captured the Goma city. Goma is essentially, it lies on the border between Rwanda and Lake Kivu. Okay, so here you can see there is area Kivu. Okay, so you must not confuse between Kiev and Kivu. Kiev is different and Kivu is different. Okay, so in prelims particularly, you must know this fact of Kiev. KIVU is the place or the region in DRC, but Kiev, obviously, where exactly is Kiev. Okay, So you just remember this major spelling, okay, very important from the perspective of prelims. Okay, so M23 are rapidly capturing these important cities. Okay, essentially, you know, many times these M23 rebels in particular have the support of Rwandan armed forces as well. There are other players in this conflict like UAE. You know, recently we have seen UAE getting accused of genocide in DRC in this particular conflict. So, you know, it is huge sort of very complicated conflict, which is again creating humanitarian crisis in the whole region. Very important. See, from the perspective of prelims, you must know the resource richness of Congo, DRC. So the coltan is found. See, DRC is majorly known for gold and coltan. So what is this coltan? Is ore form of tantalum. So tantalum is often, you know, major component of today's electronics. So essentially, but you know, they are sourced from the coltan mines. So what is the coltan? It is a blue gray lustrous metal which is, you know, which can hold high charge. Okay, so you know, you must know this fact, very important, very interesting fact about coltan. It is, you know, you can see the picture here, it is just a metal, okay, which is found tremendously which is found abundantly rather in DRC. As I said, you know, M23 rebel group is there. It is a Tutsi minority rebel group, okay, in North Kivu province. Okay, so here we have, you know, the locational aspect of DRC. Obviously, the DRC is, you know, located at the center of Africa. Very important. Equator goes through it. Okay, obviously, whole of the country you can see is the basin for Congo River. So the Congo River is also a very special river, one of the largest rivers, as well as it has the distinction, or rather it is one of the rivers which crosses the equator twice. Very interesting fact rather. Okay, transitional space for geography as well. Mostly, see, there are these Congo rainforests are essentially evergreen forest, but you can find grasslands as well. You can find mountains as well in the west. Okay, so this, you know, this particular slide here mentions very important facts about Congo rainforest. So it is, you know, essentially largest rainforest after Amazon rainforest, location obviously at the center of large part of central and western DRC. Congo River Basin, it forms the major part of Congo River Basin. Rather, Congo River is the reason for the rainforest itself. So Congo River, one of the largest rivers, it is rather second largest in Africa after Nile. Okay. So this is the practice question. Just comment your answer in the comment section. Very interesting, very important question here. So in the decoded section, we are going to discuss very important. Per se, it is not editorial that featured in the Indian Express or the Hindu newspapers, but important from the perspective of GS2 International Relations Mains is India's demand for UNSC reforms. Okay, so what is the news particularly here is India being a sure contender for seat in expanded UNSC IGN chair. So what exactly is this intergovernmental negotiations, or you know, who is this chair and what exactly is this group's mandate is, that we are going to see along with the reforms needed for United Nations Security Council in particular. Okay, we have, you know, many times we have PYQ surrounding that particular issue, and many times, you know, our own External Affairs Minister Jaishankar has emphatically defended India's position, or India's, you know, sort of position for the seat at global table, that is UNSC. So, you know, you can see in Mains 2015 they directly asked this particular issue and this particular question. Okay, so most of the time, you know, the issue is surrounding why United Nations Security Council reform is stuck, who is opposing that particular reform, and what the other countries are doing about it. Okay, so that's the whole, or you know, comprehensive coverage of this particular issue that we are going to discuss in this particular topic. Okay. So, about the news. So, what exactly is this intergovernmental negotiations? It is a group of nation states working, although informally, within the UN to further reform UNSC. Okay. So, the purpose is UNSC reforms. So, what is exactly is this group? It is essentially a grouping, informal grouping rather, which is focusing on the UNSC reforms. So, what are some member countries? Essentially, it contains African Union, G4 nations, okay, United for Consensus group. There is L.69 group of developing countries as well. There is Arab League. There is CARICOM, that is Caribbean Community, etc. So, these are some members of that informal grouping, not per se important, but you must know the intent behind forming this particular group, and the intent essentially is UNSC reforms. Okay. We are going to see who are the members of this G4 or L.69, etc., etc., because these are some new groupings that you must have heard now. Okay. So, United Nations, let us see some background about this. You must be knowing the composition. Essentially, it consists of 5 permanent members and 10 non-permanent members elected for 2-year terms. Okay, very important. See, this UNSC and the structure and the bodies surrounding United Nations itself is the product of World War II and the victory by the nations. Okay, you must be knowing the nations already. But see, this United Nations is the product of the negotiations of the victors of World War II. Essentially, they themselves, sort of secured such a position in United Nations, whole of United Nations, that for eternity they are going to dominate this body if it is not reformed according to the changing times. So, in the post Cold War era, the UNSC reforms are never felt more important. Okay. Why I am saying this particularly? You must be knowing, United Nations Security Council's failure to uphold international law, whether it is in Russia-Ukraine war or whether it is in Israel-Hamas war in current times, or earlier we have seen the failures when it comes to Rwandan genocide. There is Bosnian war failure as well. So, many times the United Nations system, which is a product of the 1945 pre-Cold War negotiations, is ineffective in handling the major conflicts of today, including climate change and related issues. Okay. So, obviously, the reform is the solution, but again the need for reform is not felt equally by all the countries. Essentially, every country which is a permanent member is trying to actually preserve its own fiefdom at the United Nations. So, but what is the need for reform? So, essentially the whole legitimacy in question. As I said, United Nations has failed in so many of these conflicts, to manage the conflicts, to prevent the conflicts already, and the management of COVID-19 is another disaster. Okay. There is representation aspect as well. See, in the P5 we do not have the representation from Africa, Asia Pacific and Latin America, or rather Caribbean as well. So, the representation is one aspect of it. Essentially, it is a body dominated by the Western nation. There is a structure. The reality of the structure is it is stuck in the 1945 era still. Okay. And there is another aspect of bureaucracy. Most of the time bureaucracy slows things down with complex decision making processes and complex responses. Financial burden, essentially UN budget per se based on voluntary contributions by the countries. So, many times countries use these contributions as a leverage as well. So, there is a need to address all these issues. That is why we need reforms. But what are the challenges for reforms, by the way? Again, first is a procedural hurdle. Amending the UN Charter itself requires consensus among member states, which can be challenging given divergent opinions. See, all the countries are not on the same page. As I earlier said, the countries with dominant position in United Nations are not per se enthusiastic about United Nations Security Council reforms. There is a size and terms issue as well. No agreement on the acceptable size and terms of enlarged circle. So, this is another area. Even if there was or there will be a consensus among countries, what can be the issue is size and terms for this particular new reformed UNSC. Okay, that is another area where many countries are giving conflicting opinions. Veto provisions, whether we should have veto provision in the new reformed UNSC or not, that is another area. Many countries, these P5 countries in particular, are batting for the veto provision in the reformed UNSC as well. So that is again unacceptable to many reform minded countries as well. Effectiveness uncertainty. Even if council were enlarged to be more representative, doubts persist about whether it would be improving its functioning or not. Getting the representation is one thing, but ensuring its functionality and efficiency is another. So essentially, it is not guaranteed. Even in a reformed UNSC, we will have the solution to the conflict, because the geopolitical and geoeconomic tensions are so entrenched, or rather so opposite. The national interests are so opposite that the conciliation becomes huge challenge. Okay, so even in reformed scenario, it does not guarantee the solution to the conflicts that we are currently facing or we will face in the future. So as I said, geopolitical tension is hindering the whole reform process itself. Okay, but what is India's argument? Why it should be given the permanent membership of United Nations or a seat at UNSC, as India demands often. So essentially, our demand is based on certain important parameters. Okay, it is not based not just on representation aspect, but on some other important parameters like emerging global player. India, as we know, is the leader of Global South. We have seen the India success in G20 recently, or even India is emerging. India emerged as a global savior when it comes to COVID vaccination through its Vaccine Maitri initiative. India took a lead in that regard, or even India is one of the largest contributors to UN peacekeeping forces as well. Okay, so considering all these factors, the granting of UNSC seat is very much given for India in reformed UNSC. Okay, so as I said, it is a leader of developing country, particularly Global South. Active international participation. As I said, India has been active so much in UN peacekeeping forces that its contribution is tremendous in handling the whole international disasters of history. Okay, and going forward also India is contributing huge. Okay, long historical ties with UN is another reason for India's bid for UNSC seat. But particularly, what are the hurdle in India's case? So, see, we have seen the essentially why India should be given the seat. But what are the major hurdles? The first is the China factor. Okay, anytime India talks about UNSC reforms, there is always China factor. That one permanent member is the only member who is clearly denying the need for UNSC reforms. Okay, although many times it vouch for reforms, but it is not willing to give the particular it is not particular. The China is not particularly willing to give the seat to India. Okay, it shows the geopolitical and geoeconomic tensions between India and China as well. Okay, considering there is a border conflict between India and China as well. Opposition from various groups. There is Uniting for Consensus or Coffee Club, which opposes India's bid. Self-interest of the council's current permanent members is another. As I said, these P5 members, permanent members, are always hesitant to include any other permanent member in their council. Okay, so India's firmness to protect its interest. India has not signed NPT or CTPT. Okay, this is another reason which is often presented by China in particular, that India hasn't signed NPT or CTPT. So and this is emerging as a hurdle. But how India is preparing itself, or what India is doing to get the seat at UNSC? So it is engaging actively through governmental negotiations like IGN. As as the news mentioned, IGN is one forum, although informal. India is also working with other reform-oriented countries through its membership in G4 countries, group of countries. So who are G4 countries? It is India, Japan, Brazil and Germany. See, all these countries, are presenting their own bids for the UNSC seat as well. There is L69 group of countries as well. Essentially, it is a group of developing countries from Asia, Africa, and Latin America to build a support from UNSC, reformed UNSC. Okay, India has also been consistently engaging with the countries from global south as well. So, essentially, considering all these factors, what is the way forward? Okay, although if the reforms, the radical reforms are not possible, what can be actually done to expand the UNSC further or reform the UNSC rather? So, essentially increase both permanent and non-permanent seats for a more diverse range of perspectives in the council's decision making process. So, more representation is one area where we can expand the membership. Stronger voice for Africa, Asia Pacific. Again, to increase the legitimacy, we must include the voices from all regions of the globe. Reform of the veto power, in way forward, this reform of the veto power is important. So, but current veto powers of P5 hindering this particular aspect. So, they are vetoing this veto power reform. Okay, very interestingly, enhance legitimacy and effectiveness. So, increase the council's legitimacy through through transparency and accountability for council's own decision making that will uphold the international rule making and international law itself. Another important thing to understand here is text based negotiations. So, we can move forward with text based specific proposals from developed countries as well as developing countries and getting them debated. Intermediate reforms like G4 proposes the creation of new temporary category of seats. So, G4 what it proposes is it can what the UNSC can do is it can create new temporary category of seats with longer terms more than 2 years. Okay. So, that is one area where one simpler area where the reform is possible. Rather than having 2-year term, we can increase this particular term. Okay. There is resolution 377A of UNGA which can be taken into consideration for deciding the issue of UNSC reforms. So, that can also be done. But what India can do? It can play very active role in major important international conflicts so that it can assert its own influence, at the same time align the foreign policy in coherence with what? To better impact its presence in the geopolitics of the world. So, essentially effective response to various geopolitical conflicts is also needed. So, this is it for when it comes to the UNSC reforms. This is very interesting questions. Just go through the question and try to answer it based on the discussion that we had. So, this is it from my side. Stay tuned for another session of Daily News Analysis tomorrow. Thank you.